Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in today because we're looking at something so profoundly human, yet, honestly, so completely misunderstood. We're talking about the incredible science of human tears. Now, we've all shed them, right? Whether it's from a heartbreaking movie, a moment of sheer joy, or just, chopping up dinner, tears always seem to show up uninvited. But here's the thing, they are far more than just drops of salty water falling from your face. They're actually this complex, invisible system doing some incredibly heavy lifting for your body every single day. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how that whole system works. Which brings us to this fascinating everyday mystery. Why are humans one of the only animals that actually cry emotional tears? Seriously, think about it. If tears were just water, they absolutely wouldn't possess the sheer power to make us feel physically and mentally better after a good cry. There's a deep biological reason our bodies react this way to the world. It's this wild evolutionary quirk that has baffled scientists for decades, and uncovering that exact biological reason is what we're going to do right now.
Session 1. Your eyes are never dry.
15 to 20. That is how many times you blink every single minute. And with every single one of those blinks, your body is spreading a fresh, healthy, incredibly thin layer of tears right across the entire surface of your eye. Think about the physical sensation of stepping out into a harsh, dry, winter wind without sunglasses. Your eyes instantly feel kind of gritty and uncomfortable, right? Well, that's exactly what happens when this delicate tear layer gets compromised. These baseline tears are working around the clock to keep your eyes smooth, clean, and healthy. Without this constant microscopic wash, your eyes would immediately become irritated and highly vulnerable to infections. So before we even touch on sadness or joy, we have to acknowledge that tears are fundamentally absolutely crucial for your vision.
Section 2. The source of your tears. Enter the absolute unsung heroes of your face, your lacrimal glands. These are small, almond-shaped organs tucked just above each of your eyes, resting safely up under the orbital bone. And the crazy part? They almost never take a break. They're constantly working, continuously pumping out the tears that travel across your eye with every single blink. They're basically your body's built-in, microscopic waterworks, operating entirely behind the scenes to manufacture the exact fluid dynamic your eye needs to function.
Now, once those lacrimal glands pump the tears over your eyes, where do they actually go? They don't just vanish into thin air. Tiny tear ducts actually connect the inner corners of your eyes directly down to your nasal passages. And this little plumbing system explains a very relatable and sometimes messy experience. It's exactly why your nose runs when you cry. When your lacrimal glands go into overdrive, all those excess tears have to drain somewhere, right? Because the surface of the eye can only hold so much fluid, the tears just flow right down those tiny ducts straight into your nose. It literally turns a weeping session into a sniffing session.
Section 3. 3 distinct types of tears.
All right, we have arrived at the core scientific revelation of this whole explainer. Biology actually breaks our tears down into 3 distinct types, and they each serve radically different biological purposes. First up, we have basal tears. These are those everyday tears we were just talking about. They contain a highly specific mix of water, oils, mucus, and even special antibacterial proteins. Their main biological purpose? Everyday lubrication so you can see comfortably. Second, we have reflex tears. You can consider these your emergency responders. They get triggered abruptly by irritants like smoke, high wind, or strong chemicals. Their biological purpose is to deploy in large volumes to rapidly flush harmful substances out of your eyes before serious damage happens. And finally, the third category, emotional tears. Triggered by intense feelings, deep sadness, boiling anger, sheer terror, or overwhelming joy. Their biological purpose goes way beyond just protecting the eyeball. It ties deeply into our nervous system, our stress responses, and our social evolution as humans. So 3 completely different tears doing 3 completely different biological jobs.
Let's actually see those reflex tears in action for a second to solve a famous kitchen mystery. Why do onions make us cry? Well, step 1, you slice into the onion, which actually damages its microscopic cells. Step 2, that cellular damage releases volatile sulfur-containing compounds right up into the air. Step 3, those chemical compounds float up, hit your face, and react with the basal moisture already resting on your eyes, creating a very mild, stinging sulfuric acid. Ouch, right? And finally, step 4, your eye instantly recognizes this chemical threat, sounds the alarm to the lacrimal glands, and boom, reflex tears deploy rapidly to flush the eye and defend your vision. It is an amazing biological defense mechanism happening right there over your cutting board.
Section 4. The brain and emotional tears.
So, what about that third, most mysterious category? Everything for emotional tears begins deep inside your brain's limbic system, which processes our most powerful emotions and sends rapid-fire signals straight to your lacrimal glands. But here's the most mind-blowing biological distinction of all. If you look at ordinary basal or reflex tears under a microscope, they're mostly made of water, oils, mucus, and oxygen. But if you analyze an emotional tear, it actually contains higher levels of stress-related hormones and certain unique proteins. Your body is physically manufacturing an entirely different chemical recipe when you're deeply sad compared to when you're just peeling an onion. You are quite literally crying out your stress.
So why exactly does a long, heavy cry leave you feeling physically calmer and emotionally relieved? Well, there are a few very specific biological reasons for this. First, the physical act of crying actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the bodily system responsible for helping you relax, slow your heart rate, and recover after a period of intense stress. Second, because humans are highly social creatures, tears act as a silent, incredibly powerful signal to those around us that we're vulnerable and need comfort from our tribe. And finally, actively expressing those emotions rather than bottling them up significantly reduces internal emotional tension. You aren't just crying, you're physiologically resetting your body.
Now, that perfectly explains sadness, but what about the weird paradox of crying at a wedding? Or, when holding a newborn baby? Well, intense emotions, whether they are wonderfully positive or deeply negative, actually activate the exact same circuits in your brain. Sometimes you experience an emotion so overwhelming and so intense that your brain literally doesn't know any other way to process or balance that massive surge of energy. So it hits the biological release valve. It just uses tears to balance out the overwhelming intensity of sheer happiness, restoring equilibrium to your nervous system.
Section 5. A world without any tears.
What happens when this intricate system fails? When tear production inevitably drops, which can happen due to age, dehydration, or certain medications, people develop what is clinically known as dry eye syndrome. And the impacts on daily life? They're incredibly uncomfortable. Without those constant basal and reflex tears, the eyes just constantly dry out, leading to friction and frustratingly blurry vision. Because that protective antibacterial layer is suddenly gone, painful eye infections become way more common. Everyday dust, pollen, and bacteria just kind of linger on the eye's vulnerable surface. And on a broader psychological level, if humans as a species couldn't cry at all, our ability to silently communicate our deepest emotional needs and build empathy with one another would be severely hindered.
All right, to wrap up all the incredible biology we've covered today, let's fire off some rapid, amazing facts. Did you know newborn babies produce basal tears to protect their eyes? But their visible, emotional tears usually don't even appear until several weeks or even months later in their development? Or that emotional crying is an extremely rare phenomenon in the entire animal kingdom? People often talk about crocodile tears, but crocodiles are really just lubricating their eyes, not feeling sadness. We also learned that our everyday tears are packed with natural antibacterial substances to fight off daily infections. And here's a fantastic, practical takeaway for you. Because you can't permanently run out of tears, simply drinking plenty of water actually helps your body maintain healthy tear production even after a long, intense cry.
Which brings us to a final thought. The next time a tear falls from your eye, whether you're laughing hysterically with a friend, grieving a painful loss, or just chopping up some vegetables for dinner, ask yourself, what remarkable story is your body telling right now? Because as we've seen today, that single microscopic drop of moisture is an incredibly complex system working around the clock to protect your vision, fight off microscopic invaders, and help your brain process the deepest, most powerful moments of your life. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep exploring the amazing science happening right inside of you.